if you want to learn civil law, read about election laws. If you read about election laws, you'll get knowledge about the Civil Procedure Code. And if you want to learn about the Hindu Succession Act, you have to read about the income tax, because you got to understand one thing. In election petition, each and every part of CPC has been touched and people take it to the Supreme Court.
Hello and welcome to the new episode of a Lawyer YouTube channel. Today we have with us Advocate Arpith Bhoot, who is a common law qualified lawyer. He is also an expert in transactional corporate TMT disputes and complex multi-million dollar cross-border legal transactions. He has done his LLM in banking and financial laws from Boston University School of Law. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and most humbly being here to answer our questions. Thank you. Most welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Divya. Pleasure is mine.
So we would like to start by asking you when and how you decided to do law, and how did you take this journey and became a corporate lawyer, and what was the motivation behind it? We are looking forward to hear your story.
My motivation was my grandfather. He was a senior lawyer. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2016. So what I have learned in my career is through him, inspiration also through him, and working with him for a good long 4 years. That's what has mentored me or turned into what I am right now. So when you see as a second generation lawyer, you have many things which are served you on the plate, but comes big responsibilities as well. You got to stand on the footstep of your family and prove them. Because if you are not the first generation, the bars are little low. If you are the second generation, the bars are little higher. People expect that you know the basics of the common things. That's what my journey has been. And with his guidance, with his blessings, it has been rewarding.
Thank you for sharing that. In the same segment, I would request you to also, if possible, elaborate on your experience in between having the education in India as well as in USA, and how that difference shaped your legal career on international platform.
Beginning from the context of Indian law. So India is a fast-paced legal system as compared to other parts of the world. We are much more focused on the numbers than on the quality per se. So that is one thing which I learned in India, that you get any kind of work, you got to take it, do it as much as possible. Because in India, I was focusedly on dedication. So the volume of cases you have decided how good a lawyer you were. And that's the common trend in practice. How many appearances do you have in a day? That decides how good you're performing. But on the other hand, as I told you, that being a second generation lawyer, the bars and the expectations were high. So you have to put in more effort. At the same time, try to have more clientele base and achieve at the same footings what people expect out of you. So that is one thing which prepared me to focus and to adapt and ready for the international market. Perform with the quality and within a stipulated time. So when it comes to the international things, the volume and the scale is super high. And with that high scale, you have to have one thing common, that you have to be prepared in the beginning before you deliver anything. So that preparation was basically my foundation in India, what I had. Now, moving forward to their questions, particular aspect is that how did it shape in? I never planned that I'm going to be international. There was never a part of my plan or any kind of a vision. If I talk 2019, it is post-COVID when things turned up different, and I decided to pursue my master's and to focus on the international market rather than being just stagnant and be there in the region.
You had planned it in a manner that has helped you garner expertise in India as well as now internationally too.
Yes.
So being a second generation lawyer, as you said, that it comes with a lot of responsibility also, that you have to cater to earlier clients as well as you have to find your own. Keeping that in mind, the kind of specializations that you are ranging from, that is corporate governance to intellectual property as well. How do you manage, first of all, to keep yourself updated with all of this, then proficient in these kind of wide areas which are absolutely new, at least for Indian market, and then how do you present yourself in international market?
My upbringing as a lawyer, I would say it was always focused that you have to give at least 2 hours daily to your reading. So either it be generals, either it be the SCCs, what we get. Beginning from the prospect, I used to have Supreme Court cases, the digest what we have. So I used to order that weekly, not the monthly edition. So weekly gives me a time to put in every day to read that book, which the areas of interest, update myself with the case laws, what's going on, how things are being maneuvering, how law is being interpreted. And I used to keep a diary, and I still keep a diary with myself. Any important thing which comes up to me while I'm reading, I just put a note so that in future, if I have to refer back to anything, it's there. And with constant reading, you kind of develop an understanding towards the law, its development, its core, and the basics. So let's take for an example, I must tell you, I was practicing in the civil side. I used to tell people, if you want to learn civil law, read about election laws. If you read about election laws, you'll get knowledge about the Civil Procedure Code. And if you want to learn about the Hindu Succession Act, you have to read about the income tax, because you got to understand one thing. In election petition, each and every part of CPC has been touched and people take it to the Supreme Court. A normal mediocre suit, no one has the stamina, I would say the potential on application under Order 6 Rule 17 to take it to the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court would only give a finding when matter is there. And in an election petition, people take each and every application up to the stage of Supreme Court because they want to delay the matter. So that's what the learning I developed by reading that, oh, okay, if the majority of civil procedure cases which turns from Supreme Court relates to the election petitions. So that's the basic what I learned, that by analyzing and examining how things function. And that probably helped me to be updated with the things. Because you got to know where do you have to dig in. You just can't dig in anywhere. And that's the key to keep myself updated.
Wow, that's such an amazing correlation you established. I'm really amazed now. That is clicking in my mind. Okay, for Hindu Succession Act, you have to read more about income taxes. An amazing connection that you have established. I hope my listeners and learners will take advice and start doing something like that as well, because that understanding will make sure that you learn and read even more. So keeping that in mind, how has this kind of regular reading, regular learning, and understanding the aspects have helped you establish yourself as a lawyer all throughout the world, especially in the developed markets? Because all of the scenarios may not be absolutely similar as common law as we practice in India. As you said, that here volume is what matters. So what strategies did you follow after doing your LLM and after having such diverse expertise for so many years? How have you built your client space over there also? It will be very helpful for our learners.
To be per se very right, I do not have a client space in the US. I am in-house. So my clientele is my employer. And there's a huge vast difference when you talk about the in-house thing and practicing as an independent lawyer, or in the West as they term it as the private practice. So keeping myself updated, I followed the same footsteps. Time yourself. You should have a dedicated time to read. Be either an hour a day, 2 hours a day, hour a week, few hours a month, but that has to be there. You should have that checklist in your mind that you have to do it, because we are in a vibrant world. Everything is changing every minute. And once you are not updated, you are outdated. And to be updated, you have to read. Otherwise, there's no other platform. There is no platform which can update you with the current scenarios, current trends, what's happening, why it is happening. And the most important question is not to read. It's about why it happened, how it happened. So the analysis is what I developed about learning CPC and learning Hindu succession. So this is not been taught anywhere. It is when you analyze that, why do you see such kind of things coming up in particular segment, and you have to mull over thoughts. When you mull over the thoughts, you get to understand that, okay, this is the core and where I need to focus. And once you get a direction that this is how I would get my things done, probably that is the thing which has helped me a lot to move in a particular direction, to look forward towards things, to keep myself updated. Because if you are not, the competitive world would throw you out the next moment.
So you were litigating in India extensively, and then when you started with the Associated Press, which is a non-profit, and
Yes.
it has been established way back in
176
1846. Yes. It's been so many years. So the thing is, you moved from litigation to in-house. How did you adjust yourself in that particular scenario? Obviously, the work culture must have been very, very different from what you have seen in India as well. So what kind of differences did you see? How did you adjust to it? And what would be your suggestion in case someone is too much interested in understanding if they can make this particular switch and be comfortable with it?
Trust me, it's not a comfortable journey. Not the part of the journey, I would say, rather living the part is not that comfortable. For one reason is that litigation is like you have to be on your toe 24/7. In-house is pretty much relaxed. You are not supposed to be on your toes 24/7. You have a settled amount of work, you have settled amount of things which you are supposed to do. And probably if you manage your time well, it can be 9 to 5 as well. And if you do not put efforts into yourself, it's going to be, again, you have to be on your toes. But With my experience in litigation to be on the toes 24/7, this is the thing which I've learned, that it's fairly competitive, but you have to be sure that what you are doing. And if you want to have area of practice where you want yourself to be occupied 24/7, probably litigation is the thing. If you want some ease to you or yourself, a work-life balance, in-house is the best. I'll give you an example. I briefed one of the senior counsels in Supreme Court, and his routine was he used to get up in the morning 4 o'clock and get back to bed at 8 o'clock. And he used to be in his office all the time. So this is not the work-life balance what probably our generation or the next generation, Gen Zs, would prefer to have. Those people, stalwarts, they have done it. They have given their lifetime to it. So if you want to have a work-life balance, probably in-house is one of the things. But I would still advise directly in-house is not the thing what you want to do. Once you go through the phase of litigation, it's like a training, like the military training. So you got to go to the training academy. The academy is courts. And then probably you get posted to an in-house role. Then maneuvering over the things and analyzing, figure out how you manage your ways, it becomes quite easier as compared to litigation. And if you jump into in-house directly, it's going to be a no man's world for you, because you will be still then hopping on 24/7 on your toes, which is not required because you've not had the particular amount of training which is supposed to be there. And we also see that lately, many of the state judicial courts removed, you need not need to have a training before you appoint as a judicial officer. That has not demeaned, I would say per se, but the standards have gone down when it comes to the judgments coming out of the state courts. And if you follow the Supreme Court judgments, recently Supreme Court had to say that bail is a rule. You just can't impose bail as it's a punishment. So these are the basics. And why the lower courts are lacking basic? Because the amount of training, the initial 3 years of training, what you need to have practicing in the court is missing. So if you do not do it and you will land up in an in-house, or you go to a judicial academy and go to a judgeship, again, you will face such kind of issues and problems. And that's not going to affect the environment of the system because there are many people to correct it. But you will yourself feel that you are puzzled and tired, else you could have been doing well and managing your time well.
So won't that training help in long term? Let's say if after a certain point of time, everyone without training has been sitting on that particular chair, don't you think that will be impacting the whole judiciary, whole judgment system of ours? Maybe there are right now people who may correct the faults that have been happening, but towards future, I guess, if everyone is without training,
in a longer run, it would have a problem. And we are facing it. And our judicial system is facing it. But again, the thing is, we have a correction system at the constitutional courts. And in the constitutional courts, there are direct appointments from the judicial service as well. But majority of the appointments are through advocates, which have practiced, which have learned their way out. Those people know how to read a file, what's going on, what is the condition of the society. If you are a judicial officer since day one, when you pass out your law school, you do not understand what kind of a tranquility a litigant goes through. What are the flaws in the system? Assuming for a moment, courts believe that, okay, police is doing fair investigation. A non-trained lawyer judge would think that they're doing fair investigation, they're doing nothing wrong. But a trained lawyer who's being put at the bench, he knows it well that this is not working well in the system, but they're trying to manipulate or camouflage the things, and he can read between the lines. Because it's more important to read between the lines when you're pronouncing an order or judgment. So in that situation, I feel training is the best part. And for training, it's not just per se you go under a lawyer and do it. Go under a lawyer, do it, but you should have the 24/7 standing on the toes for at least 3 hours to understand the system, because the system creates a larger impact on the society. It is not engineering or any other field which does not have a much of impact. They do have an impact. I'm not saying it per se do not have an impact. But every small person from the ground, village, metros, everyone gets affected if there's a wrong judgment being passed, or which affects the society per se.
So these kind of analytics or analysis that you do, you have been doing it for quite long, and that is kind of your forte also, having strategic insights, having analytical insights. During the litigation times, as well as I guess you have been doing a lot of dispute resolution also. So what are some effective dispute resolution strategies that you usually either follow or suggest to the multinationals? Because these are the things which are now absolutely important as ODR and EDR are becoming more real in Indian and international sphere.
First of all, anything, either it be in-house or either it be litigation, dispute resolution, or any kind of advice what you give to your client. One thing, what I believe firmly is you should master the facts. Sometimes people say that why do you have to take so much of time to read a file? It's not about reading a file or reading a particular case or reading anything. It is you have to master the particular facts. And facts always have a timeline. So you need to sit down and draw a timeline, visual yourself that you were there to see what was going on with the time frame. Once you master the facts, law is evolving. So you might not have knowledge of a particular law, which might have changed, blah, blah, blah. But if you master the facts well, you can maneuver around situations quite easily as compared to if you just sit down and master on laws. No one can be master of laws. That's an exception also about Supreme Courts and the other courts. And even in the US, the court is not supposed to know each and every part of the law. Then comes a situation the courts do not know all part of the law, then who's supposed to know? Because it's evolving. So it's out of a discussion or a debate or an argument. But one thing remains constant in that is you have to master the facts, the particular instance, what you're dealing with. If you do not master the facts, probably you land into no man's land and you'll open a can of worms for the people around you whom you're advising. Basic core is to master the facts. Even for the lawyers who go for litigation at the early stage, there has been a trend that, the courts try to, I would not say bully them, but when they go and ask for adjournments, that senior is on legs, I want adjournment. At that instance as well, you are not supposed to know the laws. But the moment you're going and appearing, even for an adjournment, you should master the facts. Because if you master the facts, you tell the court what the facts are, probably court will grant you an adjournment. Okay, you go and prepare on the law. We will talk about law on a later date. We don't want your senior to be here. But if you're not mastered on the facts, what the file is, how things moved on, what's the timeline, if you're not drawn the timeline into your brain, you can never maneuver around with things. Maneuvering around laws can be done, but maneuvering around the facts, it's difficult until unless you sit down and make a timeline. And once you do it, even the courts appreciate that. Even if you're advising in-house, you can find out better solutions for the situations what you're dealing with. Mastering the fact is one of the most important things. That's what I tell everyone, that you got to take out the timeline. If you don't have the timeline of a particular situation, you will not end up having the results what you desire.
That is such an important suggestion that you have given. So you have been following this particular thing that by heart you learn the facts and laws can be taken care of later. In the same segment, you have been working in TMT as well as real estates. These two sectors are quite different, and technology is now becoming part and parcel of our lives as well as laws too. How have you seen them change over the years of your practice, and how do you foresee are they going to change over the years that are coming for practice? Because obviously it has made an impact. Technology, especially AI, blockchain, and others, they have been making a lot of difference. So how do you see that, and how have you transitioned from this to that to that? And it's absolutely a big landscape.
See, again, coming to the same fact, if you read election laws, you will understand civil procedure code. If you read about intellectual property, you will learn about technology. If we see a broader aspect, we differentiate technology and intellectual property differently. Either subjects are interconnected. If you read about intellectual property just, you would have technology in picture. If you read about technology, you will have intellectual property in picture. Because we try to bifurcate and substantiate intellectual property and technology in different manner. We think trademarks, patents are one of the things which are part of intellectual property. But that is not only the subject matter. There are many things into it. If there is a new technology as well, if assuming for a moment we are discussing about a SaaS would have an ingredient of intellectual property. So you got to have knowledge of intellectual property as well, and you got to have the knowledge of technology as well, if you want to maneuver around that particular SaaS transaction. So it appears to be a wide field, but they're closely knitted. Like a criminal lawyer will always know Evidence Act. A civil lawyer would know Evidence Act. But they are two different fields altogether. But when you sit down and read, they're knitted. They are not different from each other. So if you focus on the technology part, intellectual property is one part which you cannot let go. You have to have knowledge about the intellectual property and how things maneuver around the intellectual property in the particular technology segment. India per se, I gained much of my experience in technology while in the US. I did not have much of my experience or exposure as compared to the US exposure, what have been. God's been kind to give me that. And that's how I maneuvered around intellectual property and technology in the same sector. Because at times, when you are developing a new technology, you're outsourcing it to be developed by some of the clients or some other consultants. A major role of intellectual property comes into picture. That who's going to own the property? Because per se, US laws, if there's no work made for hire, probably the intellectual property would go on the consultant or the agency which is doing the work. But on papers, it's an outsourced work. So you have to make sure that your agreement or your transaction, whatever you do, does specify that it is work made to hire as per the US regulations. That is, I'm dealing with technology, but again, a picture of work made to hire gives a basic touch of intellectual property. It's not a different ball game. It's same. It is same, but in general per se, when we talk to a normal layman, they think it very differently. But when you understand the basics of it, it's closely knitted. You cannot let go one.
So similarly, how do you connect the real estate? What kind of connection is there? Because yes, what you are saying, it makes sense to me and it makes sense to many of us. It depends on how you explain it, the way you have explained. Where and how do you connect real estate and how have you made a name for yourself in that particular field?
Real estate, my experience in India was mostly regarding litigation. When I was doing my litigation part, it was mostly regarding the land disputes, transfer of property, to be per se TP Act, what we call it in India. So a transfer property act also has each and every ingredient of real estate. And now when you start doing that, you encounter situations where people want to take your advice on JVs, escrow accounts, because many times that people come up to you that, okay, I own the land and he has money. So how do we proceed? Again, if you do any kind of transaction work, either which ways, real estate is one factor where people invest. See, there's one basic concept. The wealth lies where there is work. So if the wealth is around real estate, and if you are into transactions and you let go to real estate, probably you're basically just having the bees rather than the honey. And to have that honey, you got to have at least your presence or understanding towards the transactions in real estate per se. And if I'm not mistaken, in 2017, to enhance my skills, so I did one of a certification course from Hong Kong International Arbitration Center that's called construction adjudication. Probably it's not fairly that much practice in India. It's been practiced in UAE and the US market. So when I describe construction adjudication, it's basically the dispute is not with respect to the quantity or quality of this thing which has been supplied. The dispute is only with respect to money. And that I was supposed to pay you $500 and you were supposed to finish this work. You did it, and I paid you only $450. So there's nothing to be adjudicated. The only part is to be determined whether the money has been paid or not. India is also fairly developing that kind of practice, but we do not bifurcate things. And to be precisely right, India still have the culture of vanilla lawyers. Vanilla lawyers are the lawyers who want to linger on the matter. They want to take maximum out of the client rather than arriving to a situation or a particular result per se. So that is one thing which I have with my practice. I got into real estate. I got into transaction to real estate. So it's like a close knitted world. And when you go into transactions, you find that, okay, the wealth lies in real estate. So focus on that. And that's how you maneuver out things. And that's the basic thing. Lately, I was being asked a question that what advice can you give to young lawyers who are into venture capital? I was sitting for a discussion and everyone had their own piece of advice, technical, blah, blah, many things. My advice is retain the client. Be soft, retain the client. The moment you are super hard on the client, on the venture capitals, the next thing what they do is when they come to the board, they're going to throw you out. So you got to learn the basic things, and when you enter into it, you realize what is important and how it is important, and then life always takes a turn and you go their way. And one more thing, my habit has been that if I do any kind of a subject matter, I want to get in depth into it before arriving to any kind of advice or entering into a dispute or anything. So my habit is to get the core of and the basics of each and everything before I move forward. And when you get into the core, you realize that there are other things which can be explored, and that's how things move on.
What a nice suggestion, and the way to connect subjects. It's absolutely fascinating for me. I was also about to ask you about your suggestions to the aspiring and young lawyers who are entering the field, but mine was more to understand what would you suggest to make these young lawyers understand how should they actually work towards gaining insights and making sure that they are doing it with all the sincerity possible for future to be better secured and have a better name for themselves. Because there are times when everyone complains that we don't get to go to senior lawyers, we are scared, this and that. There are so many things, but you must have also seen such kind of things, even though you were a second generation lawyer still. So what would be your suggestion for the same?
First of all, every law grad need to make it very clear in his brain. There is no secured life as a lawyer. I have in my life seen many big names who were having huge litigation. Now they do not have it. I've seen people who did not have litigation for 20 years of their career. Now they have so much that they do not have time to breathe in. So one thing, make it sure. It's a totally different world altogether. It's not like a business. Once you reach to a stage, then the business can go into an autopilot mode. It is not like that. 1 month can be huge, the other month would be very low. So stability, or to per se say, I'm secured. A lawyer is not secured until the time he's dead. So my advice is, whatever comes your way, take it, do it with dedication and sincerity, not focusing about the money factor. Money would flow with time. Money would flow with time. And just do it. And don't think that, I've been practicing for 5 years, 7 years. I do not have my name. I do not have that much of money. Some other guy is having much more money than me. See, there are people who know how to sell. There are people who know how to resolve. You might be a good resolver, but not a good seller. The other might be a good seller, but not a good resolver. So you can't compare apples with oranges. And everyone in the legal fraternity is different. Some are 100% sellers and some are 100% resolvers. Some have the balance of 50-50, 30-40. No one is similar. And please do not look at the others, what they're doing, how they're achieving it, what they have done 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. If you go into the rat race of comparing with people, you will never be happy and satisfied with what you're doing. Just be satisfied with the kind of work you get, dedicate it, focus it. My understanding is I try to connect dots. That's, I would say, my basic drawback, because it makes me put in a situation where I have to give more time on things to understand, because I need to connect my dots. But again, that's a cherry on the cake, because if I connect the dots well, the next time I am advising a client or any kind of situation is there, I am connecting the dots well in my past. Now I know where to hit it. So just do your work with dedication. There is no security. Please get this thing out of the brain that a lawyer is secured, a lawyer is never secured. You might have 15 cases flowing in on the month of January and 0 cases for next 4 months. And then you might have a blast of 100 cases. So there's nothing called secured.
That's a very beautiful suggestion. I hope it gets inculcated in the brains that there is nothing called security, at least in this profession. That being the graph of positive, negative, plus and minus, how do you maintain your mental health in all this? Obviously, you are right now in a in-house role, but still you have seen litigation days as well. How do you balance taking care of your hobbies, traveling, or whatever you like? How do you do that?
If you are a litigating lawyer, there's a trend in the US as well, and there's a trend in India as well. You get summer holidays like kids. You plan your budget well, get your summer holidays like kids, and enjoy it. And remaining rest of the time, you focus on your work. So school going life of a kid, when the session starts until his winter breaks, he's just studying. School, tuitions, homework, school, tuitions, homework. He has his winter breaks, enjoys them, goes back to work. So that's going to be your life for entire, like if you're practicing litigation, that's going to be life. And you learn it and adapt it. Yes, my next holidays are December, so I'm planning this. Until then, you just keep yourself motivated and boosted that, okay, waiting for December to fall in. That's the way you can do it. If you think that you want to have a weekend, go out partying, there might be some weekends you might do it, but there might be many weekends you would never do it. So just focus that you are a kid. Your routine is like a school going kid. And that's how you stay focused and dedicated. Otherwise, you're going to go into a big time depression.
So stick to the timetable.
Stick to the timetable. Be a kid. Kids dress up to go to school. You also dress up to go to court. They come back home. They have to do their homework. You come back home. You got to do your homework. The next day again, you got to go to your same school. They go to the school. You go to courts. Dressed up again, same well. They also have like holidays, 15th of August. We also have holidays, 15th of August. So few holidays, what you get, you try to relax yourself. That's it. Do not focus on like, I want to have Monday to Sunday, fixed routine, time to myself, time to my hobbies. You cannot do it. Don't try to get into the rat race of doing it, because that cannot be done. As kids go out for long plays during a Saturday or Sunday, you also have long time off to go out, meet friends and family on a Saturday or a Sunday. Just follow that. Your school routine is going to be for your life.
Amazing advice. Absolutely candid advice. Not everyone says that. Thank you. It has been a very beautiful interview with you. And once again, I'll thank you from bottom of my heart that you agreed to be with us. It's absolutely fascinating advice. And I think I'll also start thinking in the same pattern. Stick to the school life and take holidays when allowed to. But sir, it has been a very humbling.
And the pleasure is mine if I could throw some light.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Divya. Have a nice, wonderful day.